You do not send women to fight the Wehrmacht. This isn't ideology. This isn't prejudice. This is cold military logic, the kind written in blood across every battlefield since the beginning of warfare. Women lack the physical strength for close combat. They cannot endure the psychological trauma of killing. They will break under the stress of sustained operations. Their presence undermines unit cohesion and discipline. Every military command structure in 1941 believes this. The Americans believe it. The British believe it. The Japanese believe it. And the Germans? The Germans know it as absolute truth. The Luftwaffe trains the most disciplined, technically proficient combat pilots in the world. Men who've flown hundreds of combat sorties over Poland, France, and Britain. Men who faced Spitfires and Hurricanes and emerged victorious. Men who understand air combat as a precise scientific discipline. These men do not fear much, but they certainly don't fear women. When German intelligence reports first mentioned Soviet female pilots in late 1941, the response in Luftwaffe briefing rooms is laughter. Propaganda, they assume. Stalin's desperate attempt to shame Soviet men into fighting harder. The idea that women could actually fly combat missions, that they could pose a genuine military threat, it's absurd. But in June 1942, on a moonless night over the Caucasus front, a German infantry regiment dug into defensive positions hears something in the darkness above them. Not the roar of engines, a whisper, like wind through fabric. Then the explosions begin, and the laughter stops. Nadezhda Popova is 19 years old when Germany invades the Soviet Union. She's small, 5'2", barely weighs 100 pounds. She has dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, sharp, intelligent eyes, and hands scarred from years of working on aircraft engines. She's been flying since she was 15, not because of privilege or family connections, but because Stalin's government, in one of history's stranger policy decisions, has invested heavily in youth aviation clubs. By 1941, the Soviet Union has trained thousands of young pilots, both men and women, through the Oso Aviakim program. Nadia isn't just a hobbyist. She's logged over 500 hours. She can navigate by stars, fly in zero visibility, and land a damaged aircraft with one engine out. She's also never fired a weapon at another human being. When Germany launches Operation Barbarossa on June 22, 1941, the Soviet Air Force is annihilated. In the first week, the Luftwaffe destroys over 2,000 Soviet aircraft, most of them on the ground. Entire air regiments cease to exist. The Soviet Union is bleeding pilots faster than it can train them. By October 1941, German armies are 60 miles from Moscow. Leningrad is under siege. The Caucasus oil fields, the lifeblood of the Soviet war machine, are threatened. Stalin needs every pilot he can get. Every single one. Marina Raskova, the Soviet Union's most famous aviatrix, goes directly to Stalin with a proposal. Let me form all-female combat regiments. We have thousands of qualified women. They're trained, they're ready. Let them fight. Stalin, facing potential annihilation, agrees. In October 1941, 3 all-female aviation regiments are formed. Fighter pilots, dive bomber pilots, and Regiment 588, the night bombers. Nadia Popova volunteers immediately. She reports to Engels Air Base in December 1941. The temperature is 20 below zero. She's issued a man's uniform, sizes too large. Boots that don't fit. A leather flight helmet that smells like someone else's sweat. And then she sees her aircraft, the Polikarpov PO-2. It's a biplane, 2 wings stacked on top of each other, like something from World War I. The frame is wood. The skin is fabric, canvas stretched over a plywood skeleton. The maximum speed is 94 miles per hour, with a tailwind. It has no radio, no guns, no armor, no parachutes. The aircraft can't carry the extra weight. It can carry 2 people, a pilot and a navigator, and exactly 2 bombs, 200 kilograms total. The aircraft is so primitive, so obsolete, that the Soviet Air Force uses it primarily as a crop duster and a trainer for student pilots. This is what Regiment 588 will fly into combat against the Luftwaffe. The commanding officer, Major Yevdokia Bershanskaya, gathers the regiment in a freezing hangar and explains the tactical doctrine. We will fly at night, low altitude, below radar detection. We will approach the target, cut our engines, and glide. We will release our bombs, restart the engines, and escape before they can react. One of the navigators raises her hand. Major, if we cut the engines, how do we restart them in the air? Bershanskaya smiles. It's not a warm smile. You pull the starter cord, like a lawnmower. Pause. While you're gliding, in the dark, over enemy positions. The women stare at her. You'll get used to it. Nadia Popova, standing in the back, feels ice in her stomach. But when Bershanskaya asks who's ready to fly the first mission, Nadia's hand goes up. May 1942, the Caucasus Front. German forces are pushing south toward the oil fields at Baku. If they succeed, the Soviet Union loses 70% of its fuel supply. The war is over. Regiment 588 receives orders. Night harassment bombing. Target German infantry positions, supply depots, and artillery emplacements. They will fly every single night, multiple sorties, until the Germans are pushed back or until Regiment 588 ceases to exist. Nadia Popova climbs into her PO-2 at 2200 hours. Her navigator, Katya Ryabova, settles into the rear cockpit. They've flown together for 3 months now. They know each other's breathing patterns. The PO-2 has no cockpit lights. If you need to read your map, you use a flashlight. If you need to see your instruments, you wait for your eyes to adjust to the moonlight. Tonight, there is no moon. Nadia starts the engine. The 5-cylinder radial coughs, sputters, then settles into a rough idle. The whole aircraft vibrates. She taxis to the makeshift runway, a cleared field, and pushes the throttle forward. The PO-2 accelerates slowly, painfully slowly. At 40 miles per hour, Nadia pulls back on the stick. The biplane lifts grudgingly into the air, climbing at 200 feet per minute. It takes 6 minutes to reach 3,000 feet. Nadia banks west toward the German lines. Behind her, 11 more PO-2s take off at 2-minute intervals. 12 aircraft, 12 crews. 24 women flying into defended airspace. The flight takes 30 minutes. Nadia navigates by compass and landmarks. A river reflecting starlight, the dark shape of a forest, the faint glow of distant fires. At 22:45 hours, Katya taps Nadia's shoulder and points. Below them, barely visible, vehicle lights. A German supply convoy, moving at night to avoid daytime air attacks. Nadia descends to 1,500 feet. The PO-2 is so slow, so quiet, that it doesn't trigger the acoustic warning systems the Germans use to detect aircraft. The fabric skin doesn't reflect radar. The convoy has no idea death is drifting above them. At 1,000 feet, Nadia throttles back. The engine noise decreases. At 800 feet, she pulls the mixture control to idle cutoff. The engine dies. The sudden silence is overwhelming. Nadia can hear wind whistling through the wing struts. She can hear her own breathing. She can hear Katya in the back seat whispering a prayer in Ukrainian. The PO-2 glides. No engine noise, just wind. The Germans call this sound Nachthexen, night witches, the whisper of a broomstick through darkness. Nadia aims for the center of the convoy. 600 feet, 500, 400. Katya releases the bombs. 2 small explosions blossom in the convoy. Trucks swerve, men dive for cover. Nadia pulls the engine restart cord. Nothing happens. She pulls again, harder. The engine coughs, dies. Below them, German soldiers are firing blindly into the sky. Tracers arc upward, bright streaks in the darkness. Nadia pulls the cord a 3rd time. The engine catches, roars to life. She banks hard right, climbs, and disappears into the night. Behind her, the convoy is chaos. 2 trucks burning, soldiers scattered. Total ordnance delivered, 200 kilograms. Total damage, minimal in strategic terms. But the psychological impact? That's just beginning. The Germans don't know what hit them. The attack came from nowhere. No engine noise, no warning, just whispers in the dark, then explosions. And 20 minutes later, it happens again. Another PO-2, another silent glide, another pair of bombs. Then again, and again. Regiment 588 flies 18 sorties that night. Every 30 minutes, another aircraft arrives. The Germans get no sleep. They fire at shadows. They waste ammunition shooting at clouds. By dawn, the German infantry regiment is exhausted, paranoid, and furious. And the night witches are just getting started. Over the next 3 months, Nadia Popova flies every single night, sometimes 8 missions in one night, sometimes 10. The routine becomes mechanical. Take off, fly west, find a target, cut the engine, glide, drop bombs, restart, return, rearm, repeat. Each mission takes approximately 45 minutes. Between missions, ground crews, also women, rearm and refuel the aircraft by hand. No mechanized equipment, just muscle. Nadia lands. The ground crew swarms the PO-2. They haul 2 fresh bombs into position. They pour fuel into the tank using buckets and a hand pump. 7 minutes. That's the turnaround time. Then Nadia takes off again. On a typical night, she flies 8 round trips. That's 6 hours of flight time. 8 engine restarts in mid-air. 8 approaches over enemy positions with tracers and searchlights hunting for her. The Germans adapt. They position searchlight batteries around key targets. When a searchlight locks onto a PO-2, the fabric skin lights up like tissue paper. The aircraft becomes a perfect target. The night witches develop a counter-tactic. They fly in groups of 3. 2 aircraft act as decoys, deliberately attracting searchlights. The third aircraft, hidden in darkness, makes the actual bombing run. It works. But it means 2 crews risk their lives so one can strike the target. Nadia volunteers for decoy duty more often than attack duty. On the night of July 15, 1942, Nadia's aircraft is caught in a searchlight beam over a German artillery position. The light is blinding. She can't see her instruments, can't see the horizon. Anti-aircraft fire erupts around her. 20mm shells rip through the night. One round punches through the lower wing, 6 inches from the fuselage. Nadia throws the PO-2 into a side slip, killing lift on one side. The aircraft drops like a stone. The searchlight loses track. She's at 300 feet, in the dark, disoriented. She pulls out of the dive at 150 feet, so low she can see individual German soldiers running below. Katja is screaming something in the back seat. Nadia levels off, climbs, and gets the hell out. When they land, the ground crew counts 42 bullet holes in the aircraft. Nadia is scheduled for 8 missions that night. She's completed 3. She climbs out, drinks a cup of cold tea, and gets back in the cockpit. 5 more missions to go. If you find this kind of forgotten history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of courage and sacrifice deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. August 1942, the Battle of Stalingrad begins. Regiment 588 is redeployed to support Soviet forces defending the city. The missions become more dangerous. The targets are deeper behind enemy lines. The anti-aircraft defenses are heavier. Nadia Popova is now a squadron leader. She commands 9 aircraft, 18 women. On the night of August 23rd, Nadia leads her squadron against a German tank assembly area 15 miles west of Stalingrad. The intelligence briefing shows 12 Panzer IIIs and approximately 200 infantry. The approach flight takes 40 minutes. Nadia's squadron flies in a loose formation, spread across 3,000 feet of altitude to avoid mid-air collisions in the darkness. At 0130 hours, Nadia spots the target. Vehicle fires, headlights, activity. She signals the attack. 3 groups of 3 aircraft, decoy and strike pattern. Nadia takes the first strike run. She cuts her engine at 1,200 feet and glides in. The German position is lit up, generators running, soldiers working on tank maintenance. 800 feet, 600, the searchlights snap on. 3 beams sweeping the sky in coordinated patterns. They've been waiting. One beam catches Nadia's wingman. Anti-aircraft fire immediately focuses on the illuminated PO-2. Tracers converge. The aircraft explodes. A brief orange flash. Debris tumbling through darkness. 2 women, gone. Nadia forces herself to focus. She's at 400 feet. Katya releases the bombs. Direct hit. 1 explosion near a fuel truck. Secondary detonation. Massive fireball. Nadia restarts the engine and banks hard left. Searchlights are hunting for her. She dives to 200 feet, using terrain to break line of sight. She escapes. But that night, Regiment 588 loses 3 aircraft, 6 women. The squadron returns to base at dawn. Nadia climbs out of her cockpit, sits on the ground, and doesn't move for 20 minutes. Then she gets up, checks the mission board, and schedules herself for the next night's operations. Because this is the job, this is the war, and the night witches do not quit. By December 1942, Nadia Popova has flown over 400 combat missions. The Germans have learned to recognize the sound. or rather, the absence of sound. When the wind whispers through wing struts, they know what's coming. Some German units refuse to occupy positions that have been repeatedly bombed by the night witches. The psychological toll is devastating. You can't defend against what you can't hear. You can't shoot what you can't see. One German officer, in a letter captured by Soviet intelligence, writes, "We would rather face a tank assault than another night under the witches. At least with tanks, you can fight back." The Luftwaffe assigns dedicated night fighters to hunt the PO-2s. Messerschmitt Bf-109s, fast and heavily armed, patrol the night skies looking for the slow-moving biplanes. It doesn't work. The PO-2's maximum speed is 94 miles per hour. The Bf-109's stall speed, the slowest it can fly without falling out of the sky, is 120 miles per hour. The German fighters literally cannot fly slow enough to engage the biplanes. When they try, they stall and crash. The night witches are flying aircraft so obsolete, so primitive, that modern fighters cannot touch them. It's one of the strangest tactical advantages in military history. By the spring of 1943, Regiment 588 has flown over 10,000 combat sorties. They've dropped over 3,000 tons of bombs. They've destroyed supply depots, artillery positions, communications centers, and troop concentrations. More importantly, they've shattered something fundamental in German military psychology. The idea that women cannot fight, that they lack the courage, the discipline, the physical ability to wage war. Nadia Popova and her sisters proved that idea was a lie. And they did it while flying plywood biplanes with hand-pulled engine starters. What German commanders don't realize in 1942, what they can't realize, is that the night witches aren't just a tactical nuisance. They're a strategic weapon. The Soviet High Command understands something the Germans don't. Modern war isn't just about destroying enemy equipment. It's about breaking enemy will. Every night, German soldiers on the Eastern Front go to sleep knowing the witches might come. They can't relax. They can't rest. They develop chronic sleep deprivation, which degrades combat effectiveness more than actual casualties. Studies conducted after the war show that German units facing regular night witch attacks suffered 30% higher rates of combat stress disorders compared to units facing conventional bombing. The psychological toll compounds over time. But there's a deeper impact that wouldn't be understood until decades later. The night witches prove that women can fly combat missions under the worst possible conditions. This changes military doctrine not just for the Soviet Union, but eventually for the entire world. After the war, when Western military analysts study the Eastern Front, they examine Regiment 588 carefully. The data is undeniable. Women flew 30,000 combat sorties. 23 were awarded the Hero of the Soviet Union Medal, the highest military honor. The argument that women lack the physical or psychological capacity for combat becomes impossible to sustain. It takes decades. The United States doesn't allow women in combat aviation until 1993. But the precedent was set in 1942 over the Caucasus by 19-year-old women flying plywood biplanes. In June 1943, the German Army Group South attempts a major offensive near Kursk. The operation is codenamed Citadel. It's the last major German offensive on the Eastern Front. Regiment 588 flies missions every single night of the battle. They target supply lines, communications hubs, and reserve formations. The Germans lose. It's impossible to say how much the night witches contributed to the Soviet victory at Kursk. They didn't destroy hundreds of tanks or kill thousands of soldiers. But they denied the enemy rest. They disrupted logistics. They forced the Germans to divert resources to air defense. In total war, those small advantages compound. By February 1945, when Nadia Popova flies her 852nd and final combat mission over Germany, the war is almost over. The Red Army is closing on Berlin. The Reich is collapsing. Nadia has survived. Against all probability, against every expectation, she's alive. Of the original members of Regiment 588, 32 did not survive the war. Shot down, crashed, killed in action. But the unit never stopped flying. When a crew was lost, another crew took their place. For 3 years and 8 months, the Night Witches flew almost every single night. Over 30,000 sorties, 23,000 tons of bombs delivered. All in aircraft made of wood and fabric. All by women the enemy believed couldn't fight. Nadezhda Popova returns to Moscow in June 1945. She's 23 years old. She looks 40. She weighs 90 pounds. Her hands shake constantly. She has nightmares every night for the next 20 years. But she's alive. She marries another pilot from the war, a man who understands what she's been through. They have children. She works as a flight instructor, teaching the next generation of Soviet pilots. She never flies at night again. In interviews conducted in the 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapses and records are declassified, Nadia talks about the war with a quiet, matter-of-fact tone. "We were just doing our jobs," she says. "We weren't trying to prove anything. We were trying to survive, and to help our country survive." But when asked about the fear, about what it felt like to cut the engine and glide over enemy positions in total darkness, her voice changes. "Every single time I thought I would die. Every single time. You never get used to it. You just decide that dying for your country is acceptable. And then you do the mission anyway." Pause. "But we weren't brave. We were terrified. Bravery is doing it anyway." 23 women from Regiment 588 received the Hero of the Soviet Union medal. Nadia Popova was one of them. But she kept the medal in a drawer. She didn't display it. When asked why, she said, "The real heroes are the 32 who didn't come home. They deserve the medals. I was just lucky." Nadia Popova died in 2013 at the age of 91. At her funeral, the Russian Air Force flew a formation of modern helicopters over the cemetery. A symbolic tribute to a woman who flew missions in an aircraft that was obsolete before the war even started. The Night Witches are mostly forgotten now. In the West, almost no one has heard of them. Even in Russia, their story is overshadowed by the massive tank battles and siege warfare that dominates Eastern Front history. But the women who flew those missions, who cut their engines and glided into hell night after night for nearly 4 years, they changed something fundamental. They proved that courage has no gender, that determination isn't measured by physical strength, that the human will to resist tyranny can manifest in the most unexpected forms. And they did it while flying aircraft made of plywood, held together with fabric and wire. Think about that. 852 missions, in a biplane, at night, over enemy territory. Nadia Popova had every reason to quit, to say the aircraft was too dangerous, the missions too impossible, the odds too long. She didn't, and neither did her sisters. They flew, every night until the war was won. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or state and tell us if someone in your family served. We read every single one. Thank you for ensuring that Nadezhda Popova and the women of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.